think I came out here, maybe it was after the first rainy winter, and I came up to the canyon and I saw that the entire landscape had changed, and I felt like the land was telling me, we're moving, this is what we always do. Mm-hmm. And our capacity as humans to experience grief, it seems to now be that our capacity has to widen to experience it because things are moving so fast and the change is happening so fast. Mm. Welcome to the Anyplace podcast. I'm your host, Robin Nisbet. Today I'm sharing the first of a two-part conversation with Karen Hesli. She was the director of the Krishnamurti School in Ojai during its genesis when I was a student there. We talk about the art of inquiry, leadership, growing older, and the privilege of being alive. This is Karen of the Canyon, Part 1, Water. I'm sitting here in your cozy living room cabin next to this beautiful stove, feeling the warmth of this fire while looking out on this rainy day. And it's been a very dry year after 2 unprecedented rainy years. You grew up in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It's a beautiful city. I mean, it's watery. I grew up on Minnehaha Creek, or a block from it. My friend Phyllis and we lived in the creek. She lived on one side of the creek, I lived on the other. We'd meet at the creek. And then we'd play there all day, and then that was it. We'd skate on the creek in the winter when it froze, and we'd skate on all the lakes. And we'd skate at the parks. We swam in the lakes. It was just a watery world. And people would go in the sweltering summer, because Minneapolis would get really hot, 90 degrees temperature, but 90% humidity. And so you couldn't sleep. And air conditioning wasn't a thing back then. So you just lay on your bed and sweat. And it was a fight, because the air conditioning it started to come out a little bit that people could have these window air conditioners. And so my parents would fight about it. And my dad wouldn't buy one. But anyway, a lot of people would escape to the north of the state where there were more and more lakes, and they'd have a little bit of a cooling effect because the lakes would blow the cooling wind. And so my grandparents retired on a lake called Little Mantrap up near Park Rapids. So we'd spend the summers. My brothers and I would get dropped off up there, or we'd take the Greyhound bus, and my parents would go, bye, see you in 3 months, and we'd just be with Grandma and Grandpa up on their lake. And so we learned to fish and to boat, and then I had friends who had lake cabins, and I would go visit them, and so it's just a lakey kind of place. You just spend all day in the water. All summer. And then in the winter, you have to be outside because your parents won't let you stay inside. So they say, you bundle up and you either go skating or skiing or sledding. And so that's what you did all winter, because the winters can last half a friggin' year long. And school gets canceled a lot.
I know. I remember the first time I heard about a snow day, and I felt so robbed. We never had those.
Yeah.
But I liked going to school.
Well, those were the days when you walked to school, and then you walked home for lunch, and your mother served you a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup, Campbell's tomato cans. And then you walked back to school, and then you walked home from school. So we lived a mile from school, so we got to walk a lot. And when I get sick at school and the teacher drove me home, she goes, my God, you walk this every day. It's like, yeah, what's the problem? I didn't know any different.
I was going to ask how you arrived in Ojai.
I left Minneapolis in 1979. It's a funny story because I was teaching in Minneapolis for 10 years in a public school, and it was a hard job because I wasn't prepared, and I had 42 kids in my classroom when I was a brand new teacher, and I just felt really in over my head. But anyway, I stuck it out, and there was a big strike, and so they reduced the class size down to 35. Woohoo! So, I mean, I don't know what you could do with 35 kids. And anyway, it was a struggle. And you just kind of conform to the system and have the kids doing this stupid work. I just felt, bad about it. And so anyway, my friend who was teaching, of course, when we went to the University of Minnesota, women in that time period, you either became nurses, secretaries, or teachers. That was kind of it. I mean, there were the random people who broke out of that, but I was a conformist. And I just went along with the program, and I became a teacher, and so did a bunch of my friends. And two of them became nurses. So that was our range. You were either a teacher or a nurse. So anyway, my friend across town said, they're building a new school. Why don't you come? And they're having team teaching. Why don't you come and teach over here? So I did. And we had 60 kids. They built this school. It was just crazy. North Star Elementary School. It makes me cry to think of what they did, because the rage, the fad in the city was this concept of open schooling. And so they thought that it meant that you just build a big barn and you throw the kids in there and you don't have any walls. That is, you have it all open. So they built this huge thing. There was all the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders on the ground floor with just, you could shout to the other end of the building and there'd be 60 kids in these groups, and the groups were separated by rolling clothes carts that were only about 4 feet tall, and so you'd look across the clothes cart, because everybody had winter coats and all kinds of boots and everything. You needed to put them somewhere, like the old-fashioned coat room, But anyway, so it was the most stupid design, because you're always competing with noise, and so their concept of open classroom was just literally open to what? To noise. It wasn't anything opening the heart or the mind into thinking differently or doing anything really open. So it was so frustrating. So a good friend who we were team teaching with, she and her husband went on a trip around the world and left me there, and I had to have a new teacher partner. So we did okay, but after that year, I just went, okay, well, I'm going to go. You could, after a certain number of years teaching, you could get a leave of absence and not get paid, but you could get your job back. So I'm going to do what she did. So I asked for a leave. I was granted a leave, but I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't married. I was newly divorced, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life this year, but I just knew I needed a break. So I went to this conference called Humanistic Psychology Conference. I thought that sounded interesting, and I met this man who was a theosophist, and I fell in love with him. And he told me that he had finally found me. It was a great line. And he said, "You're the Mumtaj, and I was the Shah Jahan in our past lives." And I built the Taj Mahal for you, my dear. And I just fell hook, line, and sinker. I was just naive and stupid. But we were together for a couple years. And so since he was a theosophist and he believed in reincarnation and all that stuff, we went to the Theosophical Society headquarters in Wheaton, Illinois, for a weekend workshop. And I thought, yeah, that'll be fun. I don't remember what the workshop was about, but we arrived there, and within the first hour of being there, I never saw him for the entire weekend. on Sunday night, we were driving back from Chicago to Minneapolis. I said, where in the hell have you been? He goes, sorry, honey, I met the real Mom Tosh. So that was the end of that. He broke my heart. But the upside was that I had gotten familiar with Theosophy. I thought this is so interesting because it was so different from my church of origin as a Lutheran, St. John's Lutheran Church. But the Lutheran Church didn't fulfill me in any way. There were all these questions, kind of like my best friend Phyllis said to me at one point, Karen, you really should quit your church and come to mine because mine is the one true church. And I said, what do you mean, one true church, And she was Catholic, and she said, well, this is what I've been told, and I'm worried about you're going to go to hell. We were 10 at the time, and so we had a breakup at that point. We got back together, and she's still, I consider, my oldest and dearest friend. But that was a break in our friendship when she said, I'm going to go to hell because of the church I was going to. And so things festered for a while about church and the whole stories and the thing didn't make sense to me. And Theosophy kind of attracted me. And so having been in Wheaton at the Theosophical headquarters, I met people, and eventually they invited me to come out to Crotona. No, first they invited me to come work there for the summer in the organic garden, which I did. And then they invited me to come out to Crotona, which is in Ojai. So they said, we'll put you up and we'll put you in a house with a bunch of other women. You can attend the Crotona School of Theosophy. I said, fine. But that was basically a doorway to learn about Krishnamurti. I mean, I see how it all kind of happened now. It was like doors were opening right, left, and center, and I just was walking through all of them. I landed here in Ojai, had a great time up at the Theosophical School. These women were terrific, and we went to class from 10 to noon, and then we had the afternoon to study and meditate and go for walks. And somewhere along the line, I learned about Krishnamurti, and the school was right next door, so I'd go down and watch the videos in the pavilion of Krishnamurti, and I went, ooh. So I decided to go to India after my 3-month stint at Crotona, and I went to hear Krishna, because Krishnamurti was still alive and speaking. This is 1979. So I went to Chennai, and I stayed at Adyar, the Theosophical headquarters, which is just like a mile or two from where Krishnamurti was speaking, and I went to hear him talk. And after one of the talks, I was just standing there weeping and going, I guess Theosophy isn't going to work for me. Because they were very rigid in their whole belief system, and I was so struck by what Krishnamurti was saying. So I was standing there, and a man just said, are you okay? And I said, yes. And he said, where are you from? I said, Minneapolis. He goes, oh, so am I. And what are you doing here? Well, about now I'm thinking maybe I want to go and quit my job in Minneapolis and move to Ojai and maybe teach at this new school where I was just coming from Ojai. And he goes, oh, well, if you're thinking of teaching at a K school, don't you think you should talk to K? And I went, well, he goes, well, I'm Krishnamurti's secretary's brother. I'm visiting her from Minneapolis. And so maybe I could help you arrange to have a talk. So he said, write a letter to Krishnamurti and tell him what you're thinking, and then meet me here for tomorrow's talk, and I'll give him the letter. So eventually I got to talk to Krishnamurti, because I was confused about what to do. I knew that the inner city where I was working in Minneapolis needed good people, needed good teachers. The kids they suffered terribly from neglect and bad parenting and poverty. And I mean, it was awful. But I knew I was needed there. And I said, from what I saw over at Oak Grove and Ojai, they've got it made in the shade. I mean, they got the parents who care. They're going to put their kids in this nice school with, it looks like a camp. It was just sprawling oaks and beautiful. I mean, you know, they already have it going, so maybe I should just stay. And Krishnamurti said, well, you'll hit your head against the wall a lot less if you come to Ojai. And I thought, well, that's an interesting way of putting it. And for the next week or two, I was invited to come to the Vasant Vihar for lunch. So then I met a person, he said he was going to visit all the Krishnamurti schools. Did I want to come? Well, of course I wanted to go visit the Krishnamurti. So we went to Rajghat up in Varanasi, and we went to Rishi Valley and Bangalore. So we did that wonderful trip over the next 2 or 3 months. And then I came back to Ojai, interviewed with Mark Lee, and he said, yeah, I'll hire you, but we don't have any teaching positions. So how about being secretary? So I said, fine, I'll be the secretary, because she was leaving. The school was 5 years old. Meanwhile, I had met Jeff. Because we were both at the talks in May in 1980, and he was coming from Canada where there was a school at the time, and he had been teaching there. And so on his way home to Wales, he was coming through Ojai, and so we were part of the volunteer team to put the talks on. And so we met. I ended up going to Wales for the summer. Well, he was building a house over there, and I helped him. And then I came back and was going to do my secretarial job, and Mark says, oh, guess what? One of our teachers left. He went back to Minneapolis, so you can teach. I went, you're kidding. You know, good thing I brought all my teaching stuff, because, you know, I had a station wagon, a 1974 station wagon that was chock-a-block of teaching materials. And then once I arrived and started teaching, I'd put my whole class in that car, because it was a 3-seater, you know, the back of the station wagon faced out. But I could fit 8 kids in that car. We went all the heck over, all over. We just went on these day trips. I mean, that's what we spent it was so fun to have 8 students and a car and just drive wherever we wanted to, you know, for the day.
What age were they?
They were 4th and 5th.
Okay.
The school was still small. It only had like 30 or 35 kids. There were maybe 4 groups or 5 groups.
Okay.
And so the ages were all glommed together. It wasn't your standard, you know, 10-year-olds are here,
right.
11-year-olds are there. So it was a mix of maybe between 9 to 12-year-olds. I don't really know. I don't remember.
Was that how the Group A, Group B, Group C got started? Was to sort of identify the various...
Yeah.
That was my era. Now Oak Grove's back to the traditional...
Well, right. They grew. So they still group kids according to what works for the kid, and it's not just age-based.
And then how did you become director of the school?
Let's see, I was there for started teaching in 80, and around, Krishnamurti died in 86, and that hit everybody in the gut bad. I mean, it was like, because the staff had, every year we'd go up to the East End, and for a month or 2 on the weekends, we'd have these conversations with Krishnamurti. You know, he'd solve all our problems, so we thought. I mean, he'd go, you know, you got to do your homework. Why aren't you thinking about this? I'm not here to do that. But nevertheless, when, you know, he'd come for 3 months every year, and we'd kind of store up a bunch of questions to ask him when he got here. And it's like, well, what about that? How do you deal with a parent who's off their rockers and they won't, you know, they'll scold and punish the kid, you know, and we're trying not to have a punishment system in place. We're just trying to be reasonable and think of the good of the kid and the good of the group, and not use those kind of strategies, which we've all seeing what damage it does. There's no personal intrinsic motivations then. You just become conforming to what the rules are instead of driven by your own desire to learn. So anyway, we'd talk about everything. And somewhere along the line, Mark Lee, who was the founding director of the school, was asked to become the executive director of the foundation and leave his position as director of the school. And so there was this opening, and there's more to it than that that's kind of political, and I don't know what the trustees were doing at the time because I was a teacher and not involved at that level of decision making, but it was announced, and we were sad to see Mark leave, but there had been some issues with him as director too. And so David Moody was appointed director, and I'm a little fuzzy on what actually happened, because then David, after a year, he left. And so the whole thing was a confusing time after Kay died. And at one point, they didn't have anybody. Mark had gone, and David was gone. And David Moody was, a great teacher, but not a good administrator because he didn't tie up the loose ends very well. He was a very smart guy, and I've never seen math taught as brilliantly as he would teach math. It made perfect sense. If I had a math teacher like him, the whole world would be different to me. He made sense. He would say, all you need in life is math and music. If you could teach math and music, you'd really have a great life. His teaching capacity was beyond anything I'd ever seen.
It's almost like to learn that is actually just a way of learning how to read the world. Traditional schooling, there's some idea that if we get enough information and enough knowledge, it means that we're something or someone. But really, for me, what I've found in my learning process is the most important thing is training how to be adaptable, how to assess information, and how to constantly have a mind that can be moldable. I don't want to harden.
Exactly. It's like if you get enough information, then you can make it in the world. And it is true to a certain extent, but it's the extent that is the problem when it goes over into the everything mode. It's not everything, It's like the limitation of knowledge.
And how we can become so identified with it, too. Which...
No, look. Yeah. Fixating on David's deep understanding and trying to incorporate what Kay was saying into a classroom is like quite a few steps in there, right? You don't want to just have it become something that you do because Kay said so. It would be a contradiction, right? Figure it out for yourself, and if it makes sense, then your actions will follow. And so there was a kind of leap of faith with some things, and then with other things, they were just simply clear. And David was the stepping stone sometimes between what Kay was saying and bringing it into reality in the classroom. It's like, yeah, you can have silence, but no, you don't have to start the day with silence, and there's no rules here. Figure it out. What do the kids need at different ages? And he would talk it through with you. So anyway, he left, and then the trustees asked Carol Starks and Mary Lou Sorum and myself to be a triumvirate directorship thing. Well, I don't know anything about the budget, are you sure? I mean, what does that mean to be an administrator? Oh, and by the way, you'd still be teaching.
Oh. Wow.
So we all kind of naively said yes. And we were figuring it out for that first year. And then Carol Starks said, I'm out of here. I'm going to Brockwood. She had 2 kids. And they went traveling all over the place, and that Brockwood was just one step on the way to. They went to Japan. They were just world people. So when she left, I was left holding the bag for the elementary and junior high, and Mary Lou was the director for the high school. Mary Lou and I worked together beautifully for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, and I wasn't teaching anymore. The school was growing, and administratively, I liked that model where you had 2 directors, and because we talked things over, and there was a lot of overlap. Mm-hmm. And our different styles, it was just really good. But it's a big job, and after a while, I got tired, and so I asked for a year off. And that was really cool. I went over to India. Jeff and I went and visited all the schools again, and we went on this world trip. We were in Kathmandu hiking, or in Nepal, and went to Bali and Mexico for 3 months. I mean, we just had a blast. And I came back and I asked the trustees, well, if you want me back, I need your vote of confidence. I'm happy to come back. But you've had a chance to have Naya being the interim director. Mary Lou was still there. Uh-huh. And so I'm happy to come back, or I'm happy to go back teaching, whatever. So they invited me to come back. So I went back and was administrator for another 7 years. And then, meanwhile, Joy, who was our goddaughter, she graduated from high school in 2001. And I thought, well, this is a good time to stop. Mm. So I resigned. Administration is a wonderful thing. I mean, the team of teachers that I worked with made it work because they were committed to integrating what Kay was talking about, or at least diving into the inquiry. So we were all in it together, and I think the thing that worked for both of us was this consensus model. So I wasn't the authoritative type of person bossing people around. It just wasn't in my nature to do so. But we'd have these meetings in my office, and I had a couch in there with puppets for the kids to sit on when they get sent over to the principal.
And your sand garden.
I
remember your sand garden.
Yeah, I had all these props, and I was like, well, what happened today? But the teachers would come in there, and they'd get the puppets, and we'd be goofing around, and they'd be doing the same. And we'd be just crunched, some people on the floor, trying to make a circle, and we'd just sit and we'd talk through everything. Meetings would last 3 or 4 hours on Wednesday afternoons. That's what we did. And we'd make decisions together. And it was such a fun, those Wednesday afternoon meetings, that was kind of what I looked forward to every week, because then instead of just going out and visiting people in their classrooms, this was, here we are together figuring stuff out.
What was the hardest thing about that job?
The politics, it's just like you got parents, you got teachers, you got trustees, and the larger community. And everybody has an idea about how things should work. So there's a lot of deep listening needed and good communication, and not the image making. But we get caught in these traps, and the images come in, and so then you get alienated, and the alienation continues. You don't let it go. And it works both ways. I was feeling alienated, and also I was alienating because I had given up on people, and you can't give up on anybody anytime. We're moving pieces. It's a moving thing. And so it was all about learning, because you have a responsibility. And if you don't know how to do something, sometimes it's hard to ask for help. It might still happen that a teacher would be asked to be an administrator. Some people might have just a natural inclination for that kind of order that's needed. But I tend to be a little less ordered and a little on the more winging it style. So I don't think it lent itself all that great to the position. On some levels it did, like I say, on the building consensus. I mean, I think teachers had a lot of open invitation and nudging to be creative and do it. You know, get crazy with those kids. Don't sit them at desks and have it become boring and stupid. On that level, I think I did okay, but on another level, the school was just always in debt for the entire time, and we could never balance our books. And I don't know if that was fault of mine or just it wasn't possible, because we had people who wanted to come, but they couldn't afford to pay the tuition. And so our hearts, of course, were weak. We couldn't say no to these families that said, oh, you know, we tried public school and it didn't work and my kid is suffering and blah, blah, blah. So the KFA would support the school and fill in the differences. And it wasn't until the school was probably 35 years old that we started balancing our budget. You know, it was a long haul that way, because you've got a big campus and lots of physical needs. And then the school expanded into the high school in the 80s. Before Kay died, it was being built. And that was, the parents were just saying, well, you're going to have this Krishnamurti School up through 8th grade and then send them over to Nordhoff? No way. So the parents just fussed, and finally Krishnamurti said, okay, let's build a high school. But it was never intended to be a high school. I lived on the campus there, and like the teachers, had their classroom downstairs and their little apartment upstairs. And then we go over to the main house for meals. And it was supposed to be that kind of a thing. Well, the plan didn't work because you can't sustain a school with all the art and the music and the gardening and the PE, all these beautiful elective typey classes that for the whole child, right? We had to bring in the world for the whole child, but it was expensive. If you only have 8 kids and half of them are on financial aid, it's not affordable to make it work. So the KFA was gracious enough all those decades to just fill in the deficit. But finally the school grew. Now, unfortunately, there's 18 kids in a class. But that's the magic number that makes it balance its budget, because the KFA couldn't continue to do that.
Right.
I mean, they can't.
I think most of my years, the class size was 10 to 12.
Yes.
And I remember when I came for Group B, I was 6, and it was in the high school. And the high school must have just been built then.
Yes. So what do you remember about being in a group with 10 or 12 kids?
I mean, I flash on memories all the time and chuckle and bring things up to to friends like now or Brent. I think Brent and I must have been 9 years old when this happened. We went for a walk out on the Saddle, and all of our classmates were around. And I don't know how it started, but one of us pointed at a piece of old horse poop, old manure, and said, "I dare you to eat that." And the other one said, "I dare you to eat that." And so there was this moment, it was very old, and we picked it up between us. I just have this memory of like staring each other down in front of, because our reputations were at stake. So we had to do this. And we're looking at each other in the eyes as we're both like, and we kind of stick our tongue out. And I don't think we actually, but maybe we did take a little nibble off of it. We have varying memories about this experience, but Yeah, just sharing really funny times. I mean, I think one of the things that was really special were the trips that we took to different places. And I remember a trip to Catalina Island, and then there was the Baja trip in junior high. But the camping trips, Rose Valley. I remember when we moved up, my family moved up to Bainbridge Island in Washington State, and the power was going out, and there was the wood stove, and my mom was trying to make a fire, and I was like, you need to give it some oxygen. And I don't know, I was 11 or something, but I knew that from camping.
So you built the fire.
So I built the fire. I also wanted to ask you, you had mentioned when you were talking about being the director of Oak Grove, you had talked about things that you learned about being the director, and you talked about deep listening. You talked about a sense of humility. I was wondering if you could talk about some other qualities that you think are aspects of good leadership.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. The whole word leadership, it's mixed, isn't it? Because I think if you think you're a good leader, you probably aren't. I don't know. There's some kind of thing in there it turns back on itself. And to lead implies there's following, which doesn't make sense either. Unless you're on a trail and somebody knows the way and somebody else doesn't. But when you're in an organization, nobody knows the way, really. It's not like a backpacking trip. So leadership in an organization requires the person who's appointed in that function of like trying to hold it together, or at least they're the point person for hiring, or, they have some kind of function which is assumed leadership. But if you're really going to have leadership in a genuine way, then there'll be a different kind of assumption or a different kind of activation of the collaborative spirit, I guess you would call it. Not knowing even. We're in this together. What are we going to do? Asking, what is our vision together? And then maybe out of that genuine question, there could be some dialoguing and wondering. I mean, because I think dialogue and wondering is the hardest thing to do. We want to answer the damn questions. Damn it, why do we have to have an answer? This is one of our yearnings, is to know, but then we think we know something, and for sure, that'll get us in trouble. In relationship. I mean, yeah, sure, you know stuff. You know how to cook an egg. Who cares? No big deal. Do you know how to live in the unknown? That's kind of a conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you don't know how to not know. You unknow how to unknow. I don't know. It's funny. So why does that have anything to do with leadership? Anything come to mind?
I suppose in order for anything to happen or manifest, there's got to be some sort of, it starts with an idea or a concept or a vision and a way of bringing it forth. There's some kind of forward momentum with that. But I wonder with that forward momentum, which feels very like frontal cortex.
Yeah, like your list, your to-do list.
Yeah. To take some moments and then to settle in sort of into the back of the brain and into the back of the body and to feel the sensations and to check in. I feel like there's got to be a conversation between the quote-unquote being and doing, because if we're constantly in a doing mode, then we might not be able to assess or see or listen. There might not be an opportunity for deep listening, or there might not be an opportunity for reflection. I do think that there are people who maybe have the qualities of being able to move things forward, and other people who want to support that and maybe don't want to be at the front of the trail, and that everyone has their respective roles within the circle, within the community. So, but to recognize that it's not this hierarchical system,
for
I think
sure,
is really crucial.
Right. We're all contributing.
Yeah. It might be the person at the back of the trail that says, well, hold on a moment, I'm noticing this, or there's some poison oak here. It's all contributing to creating something.
Right. It's like we put value at the head of the snake's head, but the tail is just as important. It's just a part of the whole thing. So we like to compartmentalize and rank. So in leadership, I think that's a big challenge. If you're building a house, somebody's got to have a plan.
Right.
I suppose the way we used to build huts, we'd cut down the willow trees and stick them in the ground, and then they'd arch over into these lovely growing leafy domey things, and you'd have a living house, and you'd just put these huts together. They used to call them wiki-ups. Some of them were alive and some of them were actual thatchy kind of dead wood. But yeah, the organism has this natural order, right? We all have natural order. And in some activities it's required to have some kind of point where somebody is directing the thing, I suppose, like a symphony conductor. But yeah, leadership can be fraught and it can be beautiful. And then the leader can take the hit for the problems too. But it can be not all on them, but they have to take the hit.
Yeah.
That's part of the job, I guess. So, yeah, you enter into this world of, my brain is just firing on all these different places of what happens when leadership goes haywire. Right? And then people can't pull together because there's no spokesperson. And yet we're each the spokesperson, and the volume of our voices together could be really unifying. It wouldn't require a leader if we were all thinking and digging into the questions together. We might arrive at the same place. That's what Krishnamurti would call love. If we understood something together, that was love. That's a nice, warm feeling when you share an understanding, a deep penetrating kind of sense of something, without holding on to it. That's another problem, is once we understand something, we want to grab onto it and say, well, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Instead of, well, that's the way it is now. I think all organizations are alive, really. And somebody said to me once, well, the school is an organism. It has a childhood, a adolescent, and goes through phases of life, just like any person does. And I find that to be extremely true or valid for my experience at Oak Grove, just because the natural evolution of a school, you start with a few people and then it builds, and you're kind of fumbling along at the beginning, not really know, just like a child learning to walk. And like an adolescent, then you want your independence. And then like a young adult, where you're feeling more mature and you're kind of identifying your roadmap. And so now the school's 50 years old, and it's celebrating its midlife. It's quite stable, and it has all these wonderful alumni who reflect back and are out in the world as, like, in my opinion, seeds. The seed has been planted. It's fine if the school ended tomorrow. It's done its job. It's served so many families. It's planted all these seeds, and they're going to continue, flourishing. It's just inevitable. Yeah. Once a seed is planted, there you go, off and running. Right? It's been a true gift to be part of that kind of an organization with that intent, to serve kids and teachers and parents in a way that is figuring things out. What is the art of inquiry all about? How do you hold the question? Dig in the state of learning rather than just accumulating knowledge. You got to have the knowledge, but life is just not all about knowledge. Yeah. It's about the mystery.
Well, as a corollary question to this, what are your thoughts on eldership?
Yeah, I guess we got to face the music.
But that's, it's like, it's in so many cultures that I've gotten to be a part of in some way. It's such an honor to be recognized as an elder. It's like, oh. And here, it's so interesting how there's like, oh, aging is a terrible thing. It's so funny. And also I hear some, amongst some of my good friends, we're in our 40s now. I have friends in different capacities who are showing up for community in a particular way. And it's like, oof, okay, we're kind of moving toward eldership. And what does that look like? And that's daunting because that means that there's more responsibility as an elder. So I'm not sure what your reaction was about, if it which one it was.
It's probably both. More responsibility and more freedom. More relaxation and more stress holding what you've seen. You see the decades of dysfunction. For the poor human, we're such a sorry lot. And then you see the beauty, too, that we are capable of. So it's such a mixed bag, and there's some kind of equanimity around just seeing how things are, not wanting them to be different, because it's the wanting things to be different which is so agonizing. And if I hold a question about, I wonder why humans do that, or why am I doing that? It has a different flavor than the depressive, I'm not getting it right. We as humans aren't getting it right kind of feeling. I don't think we are getting it right. At least it's showing itself that way a lot of the time. But I think there's a lot of things we are getting right. Including in my own home. There's things Jeff and I get right together. We've been together since 1980. And we still get things wrong. We still have stupid little tussles. It's like, and then we can laugh later, but in the middle of the tussle, there's no laughter. It's like, oh, this again? How long are we going to have the same argument? It's like, okay. Here we are. What is your question? Eldership. You'd think we'd figure some things out by the time I get to be 77, right? I don't know, Robin. It's the privilege of being alive is a very deep felt sense that there's just life itself is so full. What's been fun in my life with aging is appreciation of gardening and poetry and quiet, friendship, just taking care of people who need taking care of. And that includes my animal people. Yeah, I think the words are a problem. You know, just thinking about being an elder and then, you know, you get a little bit of, oh, I'm an elder. You know, and then you can puff yourself up about being an elder and having life experience. Here we go again down that rabbit hole of, you know, identifying with something. On one level, yeah, aging is happening. On another level, think of all the people who have come and gone on this planet. And the animals and the life history and the civilizations coming and going. And it's just astonishing. It's just, then you feel just like puny little peanut, just part of this magnificent, roaring phenomenon.
I'm totally going to identify with being an elder, and I'm going to be like, don't you talk to your elder like that.
I do say it to Felix every now and then. Don't talk to your grandma like that. You talking like that to your grandma? Really? You're not going to talk to me? But this is your grandma. Come on, tell me a little something. How about if you tell me one thing about your day? Say, he'll just make a squeak. He's 13. He squeaks. He doesn't talk. He just raises his eyebrow. He's got a great raised eyebrow look.
Nice.
Oh, it's so good. Very dangerous. He's got a face with a lot of expressions. It's like, okay, I read you. Don't have to talk then. But yeah. It's fun being old. I like it. I really like it. I don't like being diminished that the culture throws on you, you know, diminishment. But that's just their problem.
I agree.
I think we're underutilized. We old folks. We should get off our butts and do more. And I love it that California has passed this right to die law. I was totally supporting it back in 2015, 16, 17. Whenever they passed it, I'm not really sure. But it's such a good thing, modeled after what Oregon did. And several states have done it now, too, saying that if you have a terminal illness, you can get 2 doctors to sign, and you can drink your own death cocktail, which, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, hello, we don't need to hang around and just be in a bed somewhere.
Oh.
So I'm very happy to have that. I appreciate the work of Stephen Jenkinson, who's written the book Die Wise. He's probably in his 70s or 80s. And he used to work in Canada in the palliative care world as a social worker. He just couldn't believe how death-phobic the culture is. You know, you don't talk about it. Even if you're on death's bed, you don't want to say what's going on or what plan you might want for your XYZ. Right. So anyway, he's done so much to try to help get people ease out of this phobia. I've learned a lot from him about that, and love the death doula work that's being done now. And
Yeah.
it's just blossoming with the baby boomers, I suppose. It's because they have to face the facts.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them, 90 million of these baby boomers that are on their end of the route, you know? And so it's going to be lots of people dying. Or to passing. Some people prefer the word passing. But whatever it is, I'm all for it. You know, just face it, have a sweet death. I was just in Minnesota visiting my brother who's been told by his doctors that he could have had more chemo treatment for his cancer or he could just go on hospice, and he chose hospice. We had a big party for him last week, and 50 of his old Vietnam vets, friends, and co-workers and neighbors, it's just his conglomeration from his whole life came to celebrate him. And it was so beautiful. We just wept for 2 days, you know, listening to his stories and reminiscing and then talking about death. And I attribute that to Stephen Jenkinson. And when I heard him speak and went to a workshop with him up in San Luis Obispo, and just his work is so important.
That's right. We should be having memorials while the person is still alive.
Exactly. Phil said to me, we all were kissing him goodbye, my brother and his daughters, and we're all just there. And he says, well, next time I see you, it'll be at my funeral. So it's like, we're not having, this is it, Phil. We're not going to come back for your funeral. No. But that's what the kind of thing is like, yeah, let's celebrate you while you're still here. We can join in the fun.
Yes.
But I mean, there is a grieving, of course. But when you're ending life, there's nothing tragic about it.
Yeah.
It's just how it happens.
Yeah.
If a young life is ended, then there's a whole different level of grief and loss and loneliness and all that kind of unfulfilled whatever. But with old age, yeah. Time to go. What's next? Well, taking stock is another thing that comes to mind about being busy. For me, it's kind of trying to bring order to the variety that's been my life. And sometimes I get overloaded with, okay, now that whole room needs to be cleared out. Right? Because I'm not using any of that stuff. Unless I'm going to make 18,000 blankets with all that material that I have in there. My sewing room. Okay. I don't have time left in my life to make what I need to make, to unpack all those bins of material. There's a busyness, there's a putting things in order, there's taking stock and reflecting and seeing, well, what do you want to focus on for your next batch?
Right.
My mom lived to be 94. I'm only 77. That's a lot of life left.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's worth doing?
Yeah.
And Jeff and I are at this conversation. We've had this conversation for years now as we age, and especially as the fires and the floods and we're going, how long can we sustain this place? Just, you know, what do we need to hire a caretaker? Well, I mean, you know, so we're having conversation. Are we going to stay here and die here? Or are we going to move? So that's a fun conversation. But there's no answers. It's like, no, we love it here. We love it on a nice sunny day like today. But when the road's closed and the mudslides are down and the river's rising, it's like, wah, really? So we're just wondering. But you, my friend, are welcome to come up here any old time. We love having visitors. We have a lovely guest room, and people love coming up here and hanging out. Because, I mean, it's not often you get to live with a river.
Yeah, I know.
It's like Kay's expression. What did he say about the river? Something about life and the bucket of water. Here's life flowing along, and the life is like a river. And then you take a bucket out of the river. Well, what's that? That is a bucket of the river. It's not life itself. I mean, the river kept going.
Yeah.
But we don't. We take buckets of the river, and then we get stuck with the bucket and hold on to the bucket. But the bucket doesn't like being a bucket of water, unless it's being used to put out a fire.
Oh, it's so true. That's actually, and I feel so fortunate because since I've moved back to Ojai, the river down at the Ventura River Preserve has been flowing consistently since I've been here, and it was hard moving back here, and it's been, I visit it almost every single day, and it's where I get to be with my friends and the sycamores and the turkey vultures and the little ducks, and it's and then the river herself, she's just teaching me so much.
So true. That's for sure how it was when I was working as the director. I don't think I could survive a job that's so intense like that without a retreat to come home to. I mean, it was like, okay, I can come here and it would be a release from all that holding on to what's going on. And you've got to sort things through mentally and intellectually and emotionally, but also here, physically, you could just release some of that. And water is the common element. My God.
Yeah.
Another event, inspired this poem. As you know, George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis by a police officer, and his death erupted into the burning of big parts of the city and the demonstrations and the parades, and it was a big crisis in the city of Minneapolis. And Minneapolis is called the City of Lakes because there's 25, 30 lakes in the city. And it's a watery world up in Minnesota. It's the land of 10,000 lakes. That's what their moniker is on the license plate. So it's about water. This poem is about water and how the watery world reflected back on this trauma and this incident, which was just one in a million. In other words, there have been millions of others, but it was the threshold that pushed people over the edge to just say enough already. So his death was definitely a martyrdom. He became the figurehead for change. As the sun cast its shadow on an unsuspecting afternoon, the city of lakes exploded in flames, her waters fanning the fire. The seed pod of complacency had burst, as from the belly of a big-mouthed bass splayed on a dock. Its entrails trickled through the wooden slats into Minnehaha Creek. The force of a knee entered the stream. Another long-held dream broke the spell. The dam fell. Nature's breath rippled out as from a thundering dawn. Sky-blue waters rolled on. They rolled on past your mud-bound bank, where barges sank in times gone by, like the immense boulder dissolving into the sandbar on the soft river floor, or erupting to mountains once more. We're born of water, carried by water. Watery worlds lap, lap, lap. They lap our shore. Trauma and pain are stored in the meandering thinking brain. People, politics unrestrained to form, conform, reform, seeking sense, reborn, trust shredded, torn. With unfathomable heartache, we survive this ancient hate, learning to separate, to bludgeon the brother, to fear the other. We grasp with forked tongue those who are among the strong arm of a yawning elm, to hang on or hang from, both breaches of love, no peaceful dove am I. We have tunneled under the sea, sent our sons to the enemy, deified monsters in monuments, adorned our city centers in cement. One must wonder, for what intent? The wounded river of humanity, she circles round and round the stagnant eddy, sinking to settle on layers of debris, erupting then in a force of a knee. The whole of life suffers, parents no buffer, families inherit the pain to fester in silence and shame. Teachers protect the same, skating across the surface, to drone on without purpose. Heart-starved minds go blind. They cannot be kind. They're scarred beyond measure, living without a treasure. Our fragile, frightened youth seek beneath the frozen lakes for molten truth. The Mississippi floods. It pours eons of spent blood from every port and tributary, from every swamp and estuary, from the COVID-crowded infirmary. Currents of death unreconciled spew into the delta, defiled. A confluence of despair cascading to God knows where. Whatever it is, it's here nor there. To atone, in the zone, or share time to ask what's possible, what's true. Imagine freedom without the past residue. The stillness of stars, a distant glow, piercing the veil, an embryo to consciously release the status quo. Humankind rekindles, ice dwindles, and surely as sands shift with time, pain and privilege realign. Beauty beckons anew, a season to reckon, overdue. There's no choice. Her water breaks, hard labor begins. Awake, awake, all round the resplendent earth, a new birth. What is it that has birthed?
This was so great, Karen. Like, really, after our last session, I was like, I want to come visit Karen every week.
Okay.
Put it in my calendar.
I hope so. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Let's do
It
it.
might not be once a week, but on a regular.
I know, because you're such a busy girl.
Yes, well, busyness, I think, it's a bit pathological, I think.
I understand. I really do.
Yeah. Thank you for listening today. You can find Karen's poetry on the Anyplace podcast website. For movement strategies and embodied practices, please visit my YouTube channel @RobinAnyplace. This episode was recorded on the very sacred homelands of the Chumash people in Matalaha Canyon.